Hello, everybody, and welcome back to this next episode of Heresy Hammer. You are joined by myself, Rob, and Lee as well. And we have an exciting installment for you today, which is the lore video for the Martian Civil War. It's become a bit of a tradition that me and Lee are doing these. And it's also post-Christmas as well, isn't it? I hope everybody had a
It
good
is,
Christmas. Did you get any
yeah.
nice toys this Christmas, Lee? Warhammer toys?
No,
Just
I
socks
didn't.
and socks and
Fuck.
underpants that a
I
middle-aged
got,
man needs.
I got, I got a pen
Oh, excellent.
and a thing for putting a drink on,
A
like a
drink on.
wooden.
A wooden board, excellent.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's okay.
So
Can't make
yeah,
any models out of
that's the sort of presents you get when you're a father.
those. Yes, fair play. So,
Um, my
yeah,
my
so,
eldest my
sorry.
eldest did get a Warhammer 40,000 starter set. So
Uh,
that is my eldest son's start into the world of Warhammer. He has already built one and a half dudes. He's done a fucking terrible job, but that's the way it goes, isn't it? When you're starting out.
excellent, excellent.
Yeah, so that's pretty cool. But yeah,
Nice.
anyways, sorry.
No, yeah, no, good, 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 good. Yeah, so we're going to be talking all things Martian Civil War today. This is another great example of an episode where it could work on YouTube if you want to listen to us on YouTube. But if you've got a bit of a drive, then sit back and relax and enjoy the Martian Civil War. We are doing this so you don't have to read it yourself. If you want to find out all about it. We'll get to our initial thoughts in a moment, but just a thank you to our sponsors. So a big thank you to Dan from Gator 3D Printing for sponsoring the show. Really lovely bespoke prints. I've seen a recent and Anis Thiel, the great Thiel model from Dan recently, so definitely want to check out. Thank you also to Kirton Games, who are a store near John in the southwest. And yeah, super reliable, really useful. Make sure you get all your Horus Heresy supplies from those guys. If you're looking for particular sprues, though, and you're looking for, say, 5 men's or a Vexilla sprue or something like that, and you don't want to buy a whole box from Curtain Games, then you can head over to BitSponsor as well. And if you use Heresy Hammer for 10% off all Heresy items as well. So let's get over to the Martian Civil War lore. So, I think from a rules perspective, it was interesting, and we did talk about this briefly on our kind of like yearly roundup, which was that it was quite marine centric and marine focused. Um,
Yes.
and your general sense is that the lore is quite marine centric and marine focused as well.
Yes. Yeah. Um, so it's funny because I wasn't initially going to buy this book. I was a
Mm,
little bit like one of the salty ones, and I did end up buying it. Um, I do like some of the rules they've written in it. I like some of the Techno Arcana. Okay, some of the rules are just stuff that they've already released before. But if you know what that's getting, then I feel that's less of a bitter taste.
mm,
But I did like some of the stuff they've written, so I thought, fuck it, I'll buy it. But the lore, like I've enjoyed the lore. The
hmm
lore is good. It's
mm.
basically split into three stories,
Right,
but it's all based around Marines doing stuff on Mars.
right.
And it's literally there's like one paragraph at the beginning that talks about Mars falling silent. Um, and the traitors basically overtaking the loyalists and loyalists holding out, and
hmm
the more powerful loyalist magi holding out in the under depths of Mars. But it's literally a paragraph, and then
Right,
all the rest of the lore, which is good lore, like we'll go through it today, and they're cool stories, but it is either Legionnaires Astartes, and it's pretty much Astartes and Custodes doing
right.
specific missions
Got it.
on Mars, and it's literally nothing to do with the actual Martian Civil War.
So it's
So
literally it's set on Mars, but actually the Martians are not the main
it
characters
it
within
could
the story.
literally be any planet in the galaxy and it just happens to be a Forge world. You know what I mean?
Okay,
Like
yeah,
it
yeah,
literally doesn't. I mean, I'll be totally honest, I haven't read it all. I haven't had a chance sort of Christmas and I've been working over Christmas, so I haven't finished reading all the bits of it, but unless I've missed some scrap of information somewhere. Yeah, I
yeah,
just feel like it's a bit of a lost opportunity, a missed
yeah.
opportunity, because we don't know a huge amount about the Martian Civil War. I've read the Black Library book Mechanicum, and there's bits that talk about stuff, but this you could have really gone into like the geopolitics of what happened, and there's just nothing. It's just literally, oh yeah, some loyalists fought for a while, and
Yeah.
then that was it. And you're
Yeah.
like, okay, good.
Yeah,
Um,
geopolitics is an interesting one, and I suppose like it would have been. Yeah, I think that's interesting. Anyway, well, let's get into it.
yeah.
Let's unravel the story, but the
Yes.
just so you're aware that the main actors are going to be the Astartes.
Yes.
Uh,
Um,
So, it's broken down, as Lee said, into three different stories, none of which are mech fighting mech. So the first one is Death of Innocence. They've got some cool names. If you were thinking of like theming
yeah, 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 yeah.
like an event around these, I think that's quite cool.
I mean,
So
I think each one of these stories would make a great event.
yeah, yeah, yeah,
Like they would be cool events.
yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. The Martian Civil War is the umbrella, and then you've got these kind of like sub events in them.
yeah,
That's quite cool. So the Death of Innocence is early heresy with the Imperial Fists. We've got Perditum incursion, which is Med heresy with the Raven Guard, and then we've got the Warmaster's arrival, which is late heresy with the Blood Angels. So those are going to be the main
yeah.
actors, and of
So
course those three are the three. We got three special characters for those, right? We've got Cambadias, we
yeah,
got
yeah, yeah, yeah,
the first Moritat guy, and then we've got
yeah. Hex, is it
Dark.
Hex?
Yeah,
Nex,
Cadius
Nex.
next. Yeah, yeah.
Um, yeah. So the one thing I was going to mention, and I forgot to mention it, is I do wonder if this is a calculated decision by Games Workshop
Hmm.
because Astartes sells better than Mechanicum. I
Yeah.
do wonder if that was, we need to put Astartes in it to
Hmm.
give people a reason to buy it other than Mechanicum players,
Hmm.
which I understand and I do get that. But I still think this was a lost opportunity in some of the stuff you could have covered.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, but I do get it from a sales point of view. I like
Yeah.
give us a reason to buy this book other than Mechanicum players.
Yeah, it's interesting
Um,
that because I think from my perspective, or from at least the outside, it feels like Mechanicum has sold really well. So they could have, yeah, I don't know. But anyway,
but then it's
it's
not
what's
like
done is done.
GW have made bad decisions in the past, is
No,
it?
no, of course, no,
I'm
no.
not saying that it would be right to do that, but
Yeah,
I just feel like I don't know. It just feels a bit strange.
yeah, yeah,
But
absolutely. Okay, cool.
yeah,
So let's start off with the death of Innocence. So Mars falls silent as Kelbahal and those lords of the Warmaster purge any who would oppose them. A few Magos with sufficient power survive, but any others who would not bend the knee are massacred regardless of rank or station. And you were saying before we came on the call, kind of like the more
this
powerful Magos are kind of like deep underground are able to survive.
this
Um,
what Kerry's written here is pretty much what's written in the book. That's
yeah,
pretty much all you actually get
yeah.
on the actual fighting on Mars. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
So not a lot. So traitor scrap code keeps Mars silent, but eventually spreads, and the first warnings start to be raised. Just to say that Kel Bahal, if you're not sure who he is and you're new to this, he's actually the fabricator general of Mars, kind of um, and is obviously as a
He's to
result
Mars
very
what the Emperor is
yeah,
to Terra.
he is very, very senior. Well, he is the most senior Martian,
Yeah.
and everybody kind of owes fealty to him. But he is persuaded by Lupercal to join the Warmaster side. So what you have is this situation where you have two kind of fabricated generals. You've got the original one, the OG one, and the one that is essentially living on Terra and working on Terra that we see quite a lot within the books.
Yeah.
And you get that idea that the choice is like 0 and 1, and that binary choice between the two fabricated generals, which comes up and is really interesting in a lot of short stories actually. Yeah. So scrap code keeps Mars silent, but eventually spreads, and first warnings start to be raised. Isolated weather monitoring outposts on Venus fall into the atmosphere as crew fight amongst each other, and defense stations in the Cupier belt open fire on one another. Dawn orders all uplinks to Mars on Terra to be destroyed, with Imperial Fist destroyers slaughtering all within, regardless of allegiance. So and actually that's really interesting because scrap code played such a an important part within the fall of the Calth system.
Yes, yeah, 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 yeah.
And like the Calth, the planet of Calth, the system, and then here we're seeing exactly the same MO modus operandi from the Martians, which is scrap code can just infect everything. It's
Yeah.
like Battlestar Galactica when I've been getting into Battlestar Galactica with the
I
Cylons,
was
like
going to say
sending scrap code toward like the network ships, and only the
I
older ships are able to survive.
I don't know that reference
I
at
don't, you
all.
don't know? Oh man, you should.
No.
It's still pretty good. You'd actually quite enjoy it, I think.
Battlestar Galactica. Is that the one? I used to
The new
watch it
one,
as
the
a
new one.
kid.
Yeah,
Oh,
no. They
okay.
redid the whole series,
Right, okay.
and like it's become like a badass version
Oh,
of.
okay. I'll have to give it a
Definitely
look.
worth checking again. Definitely worth checking out. So, with most forces committed to the Censure fleets, Dawn can only spare 4 companies to deal with Mars, commanded by Sigismund and Cambidias. And Cambidias, if you are unfamiliar, we encounter him really, mainly in the Siege of Terror books, but he is one of the Lord of the spheres. The kind of Terror is protected by spheres, and there are Lord commanders or commanders, Lord Castellans that protect these spheres. Sigismund is obviously one of them, and he's quite far out at this time. But Cambidius is one that's particularly kind of has sway over Mars and the sphere, kind of like blockading Mars.
Mm.
They're accompanied by 36 Custodes. They were by order of Malcador to bear witness to what occurred on Mars. And 36 Custodes is a lot. It's like in the books, we often see them just working as one
So
man bands.
this is actually something that's quite interesting in the book, and it makes reference to it a few times. That basically, not so much at this point in the Heresy, because this is early Heresy, but it is a thing here that basically the Custodes don't trust any of the Astartes,
Yeah.
and as the Heresy goes on, they trust them less and less and less. And there's a few
Yeah.
times in these stories where the Custodes and the Astartes nearly come to blows because
Oh,
the
right.
Custodes are just like, we don't fucking really trust you. You say you're one of the good guys,
Yeah.
but are any of you the good guys?
Yeah.
And I quite like that. And there's a tiny little reference to one of the Custodes has a like vexilla,
Mm.
and it has the name of, is it the Mount? I think I could be totally wrong here, but I'm pretty sure it's the where they killed all the Thunder Warriors.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah.
So
Yeah.
it's like a battle on
Right.
of where they killed all the Thunder Warriors, and I'm pretty sure it's correct. It's like, you've done that on purpose, haven't you? That's a fucking warning, isn't it? Which I
Yeah.
really like. So little bits like
Yeah.
that I really like.
Yeah, cool additions to the story. 36. They couldn't get 36 Custodes into a 3,000 point
Fucking
list.
hell, yeah, that's a
Uh,
5,000 point game,
yeah.
isn't it?
They're also joined by several cohorts of the Saturnine Rams and the Jovian Grenadiers, which were, of course, solar auxiliary forces. Their orders were simple, albeit overly ambitious: take control of key manufacturing sites, assess the enemy presence, and, if possible, retake the planet.
Yeah.
This does actually come up in the Martians, like one of the first books. In the Black Library novels, where Sigismund has to has to go and collect like armor and munitions and things like that. As they approach Mars, there is nothing to witness. Nothing to witness them. The ring of iron is shattered, and what few Mechanicum ships remain are limping away or ablaze. From orbit, the situation becomes more apparent. Mars is scarred by a recent battle. The Cassini crater, once filled with great engine yards, are now a sea of nuclear fire. The forge veins of Ismenius Lacus are choked with the life-eater virus. Entire Titan legios could be seen being engaged alongside millions of warring infantry. Sigismund rages at the enemy, and despite calls that the mission was now doomed, refuses to acknowledge any withdrawal. Dawn's orders focused around the forges of Mundus Gamma and Mundus Oculum, both of which held a full production run of a brand new Mark 6 power armor awaiting deployment. More importantly, known only to Malcador and the 2 Imperial Fist commanders, is Mundus Oculum, hold the prototype files for the Mark 7 power armor. That's pretty cool. I like that a lot. It's interesting actually with this as well about the Mark 6 power armor, because that up until recently up until the second edition was a big thing, which is that the Mark 6 was a prototype, kind of like new armor.
Yeah.
Dawn kind of gifted what they had to Corax when he came to Terra to kind of like remake his sons and remake the Raven Guard.
Yeah.
And Mark 6 armor was collected. And the idea is that there are actually very few suits in comparison to Mark 4, Mark 3, Mark 2. But I think that was basically retconned in a way to justify the existence of lots of Mark 6 armor.
That's exactly what they've done.
Yeah.
And to be honest, I don't hate it.
No.
Like if they've gone for Mark 6 for the models, so why not?
Yeah.
Like it's not changing the law. You're just this is kind of stuff that's not really been talked about. So you
Yeah.
can say what you fucking like, really,
Yeah.
can't
Yeah.
you?
100%. 100%. Yeah.
Um,
Just to say as well, what we haven't kind of done and said is like a massive backstory on kind of Mars itself. But am I right in saying that Mars was a beautiful, luscious green world that had been inhabited by humans, and then
yes.
basically,
So it
um,
had been terraformed
yeah,
into some amazing
use a Genesis
uh
device basically from Star Trek to
planet,
like
yeah.
create
And
this
then I
this thing.
think it was, oh God, I've got to rack my
There was
brains now.
essentially a war, a nuclear holocaust,
Well,
wasn't it?
it
That
was
basically bombed it back into
the what do they call it? The Men of Iron, is
yeah,
it?
yeah,
It was during that basically all these like sentient AI chat GPT type robots turned on everyone and they ended up, yeah, so Mars was basically nuclear hellhole
yeah,
like, and that's where the cult of Mars came from. Like they were just literally living in wasteland,
yeah,
like survivors, kind of like you literally a post-apocalyptic world.
yeah.
And then this kind of cult of the Omnissiah started working together rather than fighting each other.
Hmm.
These people would go out and they'd share like knowledge and technology, and it kind of grew from there into what Mars is known as
Today.
now.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
it's
So yeah,
an
but at one
interesting
point it was
backstory.
terraformed.
A
Yeah,
green
yeah,
and pleasant land.
yeah,
Um,
yeah.
cool. Right. So let's carry on. And lots of these the other thing to say is lots of these mountains that exist on Mars at this moment in time,
Actual.
that like they are actual places
Yeah, yeah,
on
yeah,
Mars, right?
yeah,
And
yeah,
they have just
yeah,
essentially they have been kind of hollowed out and are forges of
yeah, 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 yeah,
yeah,
yeah. Well,
forges.
it's no different to the Imperial Palace in
Yes. Yeah,
Everest.
exactly. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah, which I quite like. It's cool to actually link it.
yeah. Cool. Right, should we go? Oh, this is no. So from orbit, the situation becomes more apparent. Mars. Oh no, we've just done this one, haven't we? So do it.
Yeah. So, oh, sorry. Yeah, 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 yeah. So,
Sigismund takes half the forces and lands at the doorstep of Fabricator Kane's holding at Mundus Oculum. Unaware of his loyalty, they remain ready for battle. So Fabricator Kane becomes essentially the new Fabricator
yeah,
General.
yeah.
So you got
On
Hal,
Terra.
and then you get Fabricator Kane. So Kane's like the good Mechanicum, and then uh, Hal is the bad, the heretic, essentially.
Yeah.
Kane eventually kind of like turns himself into just like a walking tank, doesn't he? I think he's like wheeled and he's essentially evil.
Right. Okay. I
Um,
don't know a huge amount about him, to
yeah,
be
there's some
honest.
cool like there's a really cool anthology of books. I'll have a look for it in a bit. And they go into quite deeply like there's this just awesome story about how the Martians are choosing their loyalty and that idea that there's a binary choice. It's Kane
Right.
or Kelbahal, and it's a 0-1 choice, and you have to make your decision. And the lots of the Martians who are on Terra basically feel like they're being bled dry from the Civil War, and actually
Right.
they're not getting a good deal from the Emperor and Malkador, and actually more of them are just it's just kind of like maybe we should just join Horus, right?
Nice.
I will have a look at the name of the a name of the book, and I think the other thing to say is Olympus Mons is the the highest like mountain on Mars is absolutely fucking ginormous. But I think
Yeah,
that's
yeah,
where the Fabricator General
yeah. It
Kelberhal
is.
works
Yeah,
out
and
of. It's
it's like 3 times the size of the Imperial Palace or
yeah,
something like that. Yeah,
it
it's
is like
huge.
if
Yeah,
you
yeah,
haven't kind of like Googled Olympus Mons and seen kind of like its size, just go have a
yeah.
look. And there are often like people have overlaid like continents and countries over Olympus Mons just to get a sense of how big it
The
is. You know, it's the
scale.
size of China or something. Yeah,
Yeah,
it's
yeah.
nuts.
Literally.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So Sigismund prepares to siege the city with a trio of Leviathans moving up to the gates before they open up and welcome the loyalists in. Meanwhile, Diaz takes the remainder of the forces and attempts to land near Lucas Crom's holdings of Bondescaba, only to suffer massed interceptor fire.
And interceptor.
We all know how difficult that can be. Landing nearby, Diaz is able to bring up his heavy support squads to target the defences with openings punches. The remainder of this force drops in hundreds of drop pods into the city. Diaz's force sweep across the defences, blasting apart Thralls and Vorax, and being able to even overwhelm Thanatos in the tight confines. They find halls. It's with those Ilias assault cannons. That's what's done it. Rending six up. They find halls full of brand new Legion vehicles, freshly painted in the Sons of Horus livery, which they will swiftly use to their advantage. I quite like that actually. Like if you wanted to do
Yeah,
like a
yeah,
Cambodias like style force or kind of like a later force, you could have. Imperial Fist like panoply and then scratch away and you can see some like Sons of Horus underneath it. I think
yeah, yeah, yeah.
that would be pretty cool. Using their newly acquired tanks and vindicators, they are able to destroy the command and control new sphere. That's interesting. So you got these Sons of Horus like tanks essentially killing
Yeah, literally.
heretics. Yeah.
Yeah.
Within a few hours, Diaz looks to achieve his goal with a firm foothold in Mondoscamma within its control and all traitor forces falling back.
So what I do like about this is just how massively naive they are. And in the book, it's kind of written that Cambodiers is kind of like, yeah, we've got this. We can take the whole planet. And it's
Yeah.
like, dude, come on. You saw
Yeah.
all those Titans, didn't you? Like, think about it.
Uh, I tell you what, Lee, why don't you just do this next bit because I want to have a look for
Yeah,
that
yeah, no
book.
worries. So, meanwhile, Sigismund is in talks with Magos Kane, who remains loyal to the Emperor and has thus far not been targeted by traitors. Even as they speak, the refineries in the city explode, with mech forces poorly suited to rapidly changing tactics. Sigismund leads his forces there. So, again, like this is the kind of downside of Mechanicum forces. If they're not being controlled by people, they kind of revert back to their programmed behavior, which isn't always the best thing. So as Sigismund runs out, he's expecting to be met by traitor Mechanicum, and he's stunned when he's pinned down by Nemesis bolt of fire from Alpha Legion warriors. At this point, they still believe Alpha Legion to be loyalist. They've just left as part of the Sensor fleet to Istavan. So Sigismund has this kind of little meltdown at the fact that he's being shot at by Alpha Legion Space Marines because this is obviously something that they could think would never happen. Outraged at Imperial Fist being felled by their brothers, Sigismund runs into the open and is nearly killed by more snipers before being rescued by Kane's Salax jump packing into the traitor position. So yeah, Sigismund acts like a little bit of a bitch throughout this whole thing. He just keeps having these little strops and then running out and doing stupid shit.
Just to say,
Uh,
so just to add to that, so the book is called Binary Succession. So there's a series of it's within an anthology, but the story itself is called Binary Succession, and there's a great synopsis online if you guys haven't checked it out. But it's one of the better, and it's going back to what Lee was saying about geopolitics. It's really about the politics of the High Lords of Terror, of Fabricator General Kane, and how lots of his how the Mechanicum essentially being dismissed. They just feel like they're just being used all the time. Yeah, that's why
right.
Sanguinius had to go speak to Fabricator General Kane. There's always a bit of a huff when they're asked for things. He's like, "Oh, I suppose I can give you these things," um, um, but the great thing is from that moment, from binary succession, gives birth to the Adeptus Mechanicus of the 41st millennium. And
Okay.
you see its kind of initial creation and its seeds of creation. Yeah, within that. So if you've not
I'll have
read
to
that
give it a
story,
read. Yeah, I need to read it.
it's one of the stronger stories. Um, And within that anthology that the Binary Succession is in, there's also a great story about the Legio Titanicus and their role and the importance that they play. So it's definitely like it's a geopolitics book, I would say that
Cool.
anthology.
Yeah, that's kind of what I was hoping from this, to be
Yeah,
honest.
so definitely worth checking out. Anyway, do you want to carry on with that
Yeah,
one?
yeah. So while Sigismund's scrapping with Alpha Legion, Diaz attempts to continue his gains. However, his kind of Imperial Fist forces have been weakened at this point, so he commits the last of his forces and lands 40,000 Jovian Grenadiers Solar Auxilia. They continue to make ground and utilize hit and run attacks to deter their enemy while the Solar Auxilia advance. With the enemy in disarray and falling back, Diaz starts to believe that maybe their goals to capture Mars might be achievable. Oh, Diaz. Sigismund's forces are becoming deeper and deeper embroiled in the intensifying attacks on Magos Kane's holdings. Even with all the Magos Tagmata, they are increasingly pinned down. Sigismund remains in the command center looking for any trace of the Alpha Legion. When one is found, he departs to chase his dishonorable brethren. So he's kind of almost become task focused on hunting down these Alpha
Mm,
Legion. By the time he arrives, the Alphas are long gone. Suddenly, the target of a massive traitor assault is pinned down, but after an hour's fighting, they have lost very little for hundreds of kills. It seems they might be able to hold the city. And again, it kind of describes how he's frustrated because he wants to hunt the Alpha Legion, but he knows he can't leave the walls. Otherwise, it will be overrun. So
yeah.
he's having a little strop. Even as the thought crosses his mind, a massive explosion rips through their lines, annihilating a full squad of Huskarls.
That must have been strength 10 then.
Yeah, it will be, yeah. With intense war horns from the shadows emerges Legio Mortis. Knowing the city is now lost, the fists are forced to fall back. So Legio Mortis towers over Mundus Oculum, the hidden works of Lucas Crom are suddenly sprung from beneath Mundus Gamma onto Diaz. Huge numbers of corrupted automata emerge from hidden vaults, using corrupted scrap code and Vox signals to lure Imperial Fist into ambush. So up until this point, kind of Diaz has been fighting these kind of automata that are kind of just running off their program behavior. So it's really easy to kind of outflank them and sneak up on them. And now all of a sudden, this kind of corrupted automata has come out that's more feral and it's basically more wily. It's more kind of AI rather than just fucking dickheads waiting for someone to tell it what to do.
Yeah.
Reappropriated predators fire into the sudden mass of desecrated automata as Chrome seeks to test his new projects against the might of the Astartes. Only the arrival of the Solar Auxilia prevents the Astartes being overwhelmed. Even with their combined firepower, it reaches a costly stalemate as the tide of automata seem endless and are an even match for the Astartes. Dejected and refusing to give control of the armories and vehicle halls they had captured thus far, Diaz gave the fallback order.
Yeah.
So in
Completely
Diaz,
overwhelmed, right? Like,
so
absolutely.
he is, but what it doesn't mention here is he gives the fallback order to the Imperial Fists. Solar
Oh,
Auxilia stay to hold the line because they have to hold the walls
yeah.
basically. But
Yeah.
and it's quite an interesting one because Diaz kind of thinks I feel really dishonorable leaving the Solar Auxilia.
To die, but yeah. Each
But
legionary is worth
the
so
reason we
many, so
came
much.
here was to get all this equipment that needs to be taken back to Terra. So
Yeah.
I need to get all this equipment back to Terra.
Yeah.
That is my I can't take the planet back, so I can do my second mission. So
Mm.
it's quite well done. And the Solar Auxilia who are fighting, they start chanting their kind of death chant or something
Right,
that
okay.
they sing when they know they're gonna die. And they can hear this over the radios as they're driving away. So all these Imperial fists are like, for fuck's sakes, I want to die with them too. That's quite cool.
That's pretty cool.
So Sigismund similarly was forced to evacuate. No weapon they possessed was a threat to the Titans of Legio Mortis, who were now casually destroying the city. So again, like Legio Mortis would have been able to do more damage, but they were literally too busy. They were just having a great time, just
Yeah.
blowing shit up,
Yeah.
that they kind of forgot about the Imperial Fists.
Right.
Squads of Marines and Automata concealed themselves, letting the Titans pass before ambushing the Knight household supporting the Titans. But these were small wins compared to the wholesale destruction the
Yeah.
Legio unleashed. The Imperial fists were buying time. Every second allowed more Mark 6 armor to be loaded and shipped into orbit out of the traitor's hand. Sigismund's final duty was destroying the data archives containing the Mark 7 designs. But when he arrived, he found the defenders slain and the Alpha Legion already present.
Uh,
Those pesky fucking Alpha Legion. So Sigismund charged, slaying their leader, but as the survivors escaped, their retreating laughter told him they had already stolen the design.
uh, so insulting.
Sigismund loads the last remaining Imperial Fist into the shuttles and departs for orbit, leaves the city to the whims of Legio Mortis. Diaz watches his brother's shuttle leave in a brief pause in the fighting before recommitting. Even the city itself turns on the loyalists, with lights flaring, doors jamming, blocked portals opening and flooding them with hidden automata. More and more of the weapons they came to recover are forced into the fight rather than being loaded. There is a fortune in equipment ready to be loaded, but Diaz cannot spare any
Yeah,
to do so.
because we said a city, but it's like a techno city, right? I mean, these
Yeah,
things are
yeah,
like, imagine like a Zone
it's
Mortalis kind of like city style.
yeah, yeah. Diaz faced an impossible choice. This is the bit. Okay, so he orders the fist to retreat and load up the Solar Auxiliary to hold the line, knowing they were no match from Chrome's twisted automata.
Savage.
As Diaz's force loaded up and transports with captured armament, they can see the Jovian Grenadiers fighting to the last. They make no desperate calls for aid, only broadcasting them singing their funeral dirges.
Yeah, that's what you're saying, was that?
Yeah, it's cool as fuck. I love that. As Diaz turns to salute their sacrifice, there is a bright flash of teleportation. The Custodes force has finally committed, teleporting into the heart of the battle to ensure the brave Solar can escape.
Fuck yes!
Yeah, in they come. Delaying the shuttle's departures to give them time to escape, Diaz refuses to leave until every auxiliary is on board or dead. So basically, at this point, Diaz is like, well, fuck, I've got to help them now, haven't I?
Yeah,
So they get back in the fight.
the Custodes putting them to shame, right?
Yeah, as the last loyalists leave, Martian saw the Custodes teleport out, leaving a huge number of dead automata, but not a single Custodes casualty.
Oh, God, it's so epic. Like,
The
man.
it's really cool.
You know what? You just like this,
and
would
you
just
can
make
just
such a
imagine.
good film as well.
Yeah. The Imperial Fist set course for Terra with a wealth of material and the rescued Kane, but Mars is lost to them. I mean, they were never going to take Mars, were they? A few hundred fucking Marines
No way,
against,
no way,
and in
completely.
the
Yeah.
Mechanicum Heartland.
I mean, have they not
and then,
played like against Mechanicum on the tabletop? These things are nuts.
and one interesting bit as well was Kane actually kind of refused to come with them. He wanted to stay on Mars and fight the good fight, and actually, they nearly came to blows. But I can't remember what happened. But basically, like
Bundled under the shoulder of Cambodiers and was like,
yeah,
"You're coming
yeah,
with me."
like
Yeah, because I
fucking
actually
got them in a
that
headlock.
I think does happen in the Mars book, the Black Library, very early Black Library book, where basically like, I want to stay, and he's like, "No, you're the new. Basically, you're the new
You're
fabricator,
the boss.
general now, mate. Come on."
So yeah, so that is the death of Innocence. Like
That's
that
pretty
was
cool. That's a pretty cool story. I think there's
yeah,
lots of
yeah.
opportunity to create like forces there.
I would
Yeah.
love, as I was reading it, I was like, oh God, I hope they do Dark Mechanicum. Like they talk about these kind of like, Castellax or stuff, but they're all like twisted and like scrap metal and like
Yeah.
these fucking cyborgs that are just like all twisted. I fucking would love for them to do models or at least updated rules for kind of, Castellax that are
Yeah,
just
that'd be pretty
fucking
cool. Even
batshit.
like a weapons frame with some like cool bits,
Yeah,
like
yeah,
additional
yeah,
bits to
yeah.
it. Yeah, cool. Okay, well, let's do the Perditum incursion. Now, the Raven Guard we've looked at quite a lot already. So in the Siege of Cathania, they played quite a prominent role. Cadius Nex actually kind of like featured within that story, didn't he? Quite prominently,
Yes,
with
yeah,
the
yeah.
orbital assault of the Inducti, the Sons of Horus Inducti, and then Raven
Yeah.
Guard Deliverers, and Cadius Nex kind of like came out of the sands and kind of
So
made murder on them.
he only appears right at the end of this
Okay,
little story.
classic. Yeah, hiding in the shadows. Okay, right. So, by the mid heresy, Mars is silent. Any surviving loyalists are hidden deep underground, and the forces of the Dark Mechanicum, the heretics, are also in hiding, so as to avoid the Imperial Fist fleet in the orbiting blockade. Eventually, rumor reaches the ears of the Sigillite. A famed loyalist, a Gene Right, Kepram Unguru, has been seen being held prisoner in the massive prison known as Perditum in Sendor. Worse was the rumours he was being forced to work on a project that utilised genetic material from the Custodes. That actually is pretty bad. That's like some Fabius Bile level kind of like shit going on there, isn't
Yeah,
it?
yeah.
Valdor demanded a full invasion with every member of the 10,000 that could be spared, seeking nothing but total destruction. This was simply not possible as the prison sat in the heart of traitor territory, and such an action would reignite the conflict between Mars and Terra once more. But they always portray like Valdor being such a hothead. Like in even in the Siege of Terra books, you know, when they're talking about
Yeah.
Saturnine, it's like, well, we should just take them, just kill them all. But yeah,
I
it's
mean,
interesting. They're like, well, we can't really do that. Chill, bro.
you'd think the guy who's in charge of protecting the emperor
Would
would
just be
be
a
a
bit more,
little more
yeah, a more
level-headed.
thoughtful
Yeah,
general, wouldn't he? Yeah.
yeah.
Malcador chose a more subtle route. Oh, mate, really, fuck, it's such a lost opportunity. If anybody wants to write an alternative, like, heresy story, like, do Valdor invading Mars.
Just Valdor going rogue and being like, "Fuck you."
Yes. It's gonna still like 1,000. Well, because I suppose it's midway through the
I
heresy,
mean,
right?
when you
So,
read about, like 12 Custodes
yeah,
managed to murder like hundreds of automata,
yeah,
I feel like 10,000 Custodes would
yeah,
just
easy.
absolutely kick fuck into Mars.
Yeah, yeah, totally, totally.
But I guess would
Yeah, I
also
suppose some of
lead,
them are in the webway, I guess, and like there are there are other wars to
yeah,
be other wars
like
to be fought, but
actually protecting the Emperor,
yeah,
like your
yeah,
actual job.
yeah. So Magador chose a more subtle route, and I think this is why we're going to get some 18th Legion. I think they're the or the 19th Legion come in. So a few weeks earlier, Corax had returned to Terra with a third of his legion, having survived Istvan. Malcador convinced him to mount a covert assault against the prison, with the promise of letting him take Ungur away with him to use his knowledge to rebuild the shattered 19th Legion. A contingent of 100 Custodes joined them, ostensibly to check the status of Mars. It's interesting this because this book ties with Deliverance Lost, but we don't actually see this within Deliverance Lost. It would
Yeah,
have been
yeah,
fucking cool as fuck
yeah,
if we seen this. Um,
yeah,
like, sure, Custodes are there to check on Mars, but also, as Lee said, they're also there because nobody fucking trusts them. Like the
yeah.
Custodes are sent partly back with Korax because yeah, to help them out, but also they've got important gene tech, and so the Custodes are just like, well, we're gonna watch
Yeah,
on.
so
We're
it
gonna
does
watch them.
say in the book that basically the Custodes were allowed to come because otherwise they were just going to go anyways.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
so it was kind of like come with us or just do
Do
it
what,
on their
yeah,
own.
do what.
So yeah.
So that's pretty cool. So as Chorus's ship approaches Mars, it makes to resupply at Deimos, the moon still in loyalist hands. As it does so, it disgorges dozens of Dreadclaws and Charybdis. Deimos pattern. I didn't realize it was a like a
No, I
moon
didn't until I
class.
read this.
That's
Yeah.
interesting.
That's yeah.
Corax, however, does not aim for the planet. All the pods aim to land on a single massive piece of debris from the Ring of Iron. Landing, they are attacked by dormant Skylax and Tarantula turrets. Well, I wouldn't fucking worry about the Tarantula turrets, mate. Fucking just shooting into the
Especially mech
BS
ones.
BS2. Yeah,
Mech ones are
fucking.
terrible. They're even worse than the Astartes ones because we haven't updated the rules.
Yeah, as the Ravens secure the debris, they find evidence they are not the first Astartes to have been there.
Uh, who could that be?
With the piece secured, a section is separated from the main body, and the Ravens and Custodes ride it down to the planet's
Just
surface, using
surf it down.
Arcana dampeners to protect them from the crushing forces and heat of the arrival. Kind of like in Star Wars, right, where they're kind of like riding that ship down to the planet.
I kind of like the idea of this. Yeah, it's like we need to insert into
Yeah.
Mars. We need to do it without anyone seeing. Let's just fucking
Pretend to be
break
a
off.
piece of like
Yeah,
your
yeah,
orbital plate.
yeah,
To any onlookers, their arrival on the planet is indistinguishable from any other dozens of pieces of debris that fall to the surface every day. With recon marines in the front and the Custodes in the rear guard, they begin their day-long march to their first objective, a rendezvous with some loyalist Mechanicum survivors under the command of the first Ordinal Gaio. Within hours, they are swarmed by corrupted automata and Psycharnivora. All suited to direct assault like this, the Ravens hunker down in a crater with a ring of custodians around them, and despite fighting for an hour, kill hundreds of attackers for minimal losses. Custodians doing some serious work. The custodians are absolutely dictators in this. This is awesome.
Yeah,
Fuck
yeah.
yeah.
I do like the way this is mentioned in the book as well. This is just literally automata that's just like scuttling around
Yeah.
the
Well, this
wasteland.
is what
It's
the
not,
Vorax, because this is what I imagine Vorax to be like. They
yeah,
just
yeah,
like
just
scuttle around, don't they?
hunt
Just,
down
yeah.
escapees and
Yeah.
fucking idiots. But yeah, so it kind of talks about them literally just coming out of the desert and whatnot. Like, it's pretty cool. They're just, yeah, I get like Mad Max vibes, you know what I
Yeah,
mean?
okay, that's pretty. Yeah, that's pretty awesome. So after a day's travel, they reach Gaia's forces. Her survivors are battered, but they agree to assist on the sole condition that any heretic technology they find is destroyed entirely. Ah, good on that. That's good form, isn't it? That's good. Yeah, that's good. They make their way towards their target, being forced to use abandoned underground routes to avoid the surface that has become dominated by Lucas Crumb's sprawling forges. I think it's probably worth mentioning at this point as well, if you're not kind of au fait with Mars lore. So um, it's interesting because to some extent you can kind of insert the warp into and demons into machines to really fuck them up, but also a lot of knowledge was the pact between the Emperor and Mars. One of the conditions of that pact was that the Emperor kind of locked away a lot of kind of heretical
Yeah, forbidden
secrets,
tech.
forbidden,
Yeah.
yeah, technology, whether it's AI or whether it's just generally just forbidden. I don't think kind of it goes into much of it, but that was one of the conditions. So one of the reasons that Kelbahal joins the Warmaster is because Horus essentially says, gloves
Gloves
are
are
off.
off. Yeah.
You can go into that vault that was locked up with all the dangerous like heretic knowledge in it. I've got no problem. You can do that, and those vaults are opened, and Kelbahal is able to use all this heretic stuff. So, and one of the I think the primary motivations of Kelbahal is that basically the shackles of that original kind of like treaty are essentially thrown off. I'll find out the name
Yeah.
of the treaty
Yeah.
in a bit
Yeah.
because it has got like yeah something like the Treaty of Moravec or
Mm.
something like that. But it yeah it's really interesting. So. But I don't think they really kind of go into it. But I do know that in the Mars book AI, they are starting to sort of like dabble with AI, which is never good for humanity. Chat
Yeah,
GTP
so
on
I
steroids,
think
right?
it's a mixture of AI and, like you say, sticking demons into machines.
Yeah, yeah.
Uh, yeah.
So as they continue to find, they find more evidence of Astartes' presence, broken chainsaws and power armor for undetermined origin. After a week's travel, they reach their target, the Perditum Incender, a vast iron fortress hanging off the side of a deep geothermal chasm. It was once used as a prison of fabricated General Kane, but now is under Chrome's dominion. Forced to break cover for the last few kilometres of approach, the force splits into three, each targeting the three approach bridges that hold the fortress aloft. Swarming across the bridges, finding only the old and placed stubble weapons and hordes of tech thralls, the three forces make entry to the inner areas, expecting a fierce resistance, but instead they find it empty, piled with the dead. I mean, this does not look good, does it? I mean, this suggests that somebody
It's
has
yeah,
been here before.
alarm bells are ringing,
Yeah.
really.
As they advance, they still find nothing but abandoned facilities and cells, all research stripped out and massive claw marks on the walls. Reaching the inner core, they finally find all the jail's inmates, long since brutally murdered, ripped apart, and piled high. Chorus is dismayed when the body of the Magos they were sent to rescue is confirmed to be among the dead.
Oh no. It's a trap.
Oh, another trap. They love them. Recon teams and perimeter forces start to signal huge amounts of movements in the red waste surrounding the fortress as buried units reveal themselves just before scrap code renders all auguries on Voxes useless.
Oh no.
The rear guard, Raven Guard forces on the bridge are quickly overwhelmed, and bolters proving little value against the corrupted automata. With them dispatched, the forces swarm over the bridge where Melter and Mordathan units push them back, but they continue to gain ground. As the Ravens despoilers prepare for the inevitable close combat, knowing they will not win, the first Custodes advance to form a wall between the automata and them. Loyalist mech fights traitor mech finally, but the loyalists are too damaged and remain bound to the old laws of engagement and are no match. As they attempt to fall back, scrap code corrupts them, destroying some and turning the others against their former allies.
Yeah, so it talks basically all their automata starts fighting against them because it's all corrupted. It's the
Yeah.
I can't think what the rule is, but the techno arcana where but the cyber is it
Okay.
cyberthurgic where
Yeah,
you can
yeah, yeah.
basically get your enemy to
Still an automata.
and
Savage.
shoot into your yeah.
Ah, savage. Recon teams and perimeter forces start to
Oh,
signal. Oh, sorry. Starts. Oh no, we've done that one. Do you want to go to
yeah,
the
yeah, yeah.
next one? Yep. With a deafening noise, three massive Mechanicum Ordinatus drills burst from the.
Oh,
Finally, these
fuck.
drills. Finally, drills burst from the moment we've clearly all been waiting for. Burst from the cliff face, with the prison hangs from, delivering more traitor and Lucas Crumb himself into the fortress. Corax and his forces still deep within the fortress is ambushed by concealed blood slaughterers and a huge brass scorpion. The first time a loyalist have ever seen one. That is pretty cool.
Yeah,
That's pretty
yeah.
cool. The slaughterers are felled by melter bombs and crack grenades, but reap a heavy toll. Well, they're auto hits, aren't they? So that's perfect. But reap a heavy toll by the Ravens' numbers. Corax himself engages in a solo duel with the Scorpion, darting between its attacks and eventually destroying the corrupted machine. I would love to see that as a Golden Demon duel. Like, wouldn't that just be
Yeah, yeah,
awesome?
yeah,
Like
yeah,
Corax
yeah.
fighting a brass Scorpion. You can just really
Yeah,
see it like going into its head or
yeah,
something like
yeah,
that.
that's a good idea.
As the Ravens take stock, the Custodian shield captain reaches him with grim news. There are simply too many demon engines to hold, and a traitor victory is inevitable. Doesn't look good. Doesn't look good for the Ravens. That's pretty. And that would be, I mean, if they had lost Corax in this ambush, man, that would have been terrible for the terrible
But
for the
again, I find
loyalists.
it funny that they didn't want to send Sanguinius and who else did they send to Beta Garmin?
Oh, the Khan.
The Khan. But Corax, they're like, yeah, get yourself in there. Go
Yeah,
on,
he's
fuck
like the
off.
canary, isn't he? He's
It's
testing out how mad it is.
literally,
Yeah. As
literally.
forces scramble to destroy the bridges to buy time, the decision is made that the facility must be destroyed. Corex refuses to lose more of his sons, not after escaping Isfahan, because those have several choice words about how the arrogance and cowardice of the Astartes is responsible for the fall of the Imperium, and how he,
Damn.
well, I quite agree actually there, and
Yeah.
how he hopes the Astartes line will end, nearly resulting in the Ravens and the Custodes fighting one another. That's pretty cool. Was
Yeah.
that cool? Was that cool in the book?
Yeah, it's kind of just briefly mentioned, but it's kind of funny because you're
Yeah,
on the one side, you're like the Raven Guard have just been totally fucked over at
yeah.
Istvan 5, but on the other hand, you're like, yeah, Custode's got a point.
Yeah.
Like,
Above the bridges fall apart at great cost. The first takes the sacrifice of every custody stationed there to allow the Ravens time to melt bomb the supports. At the second, the remaining loyalists, Skitarii, set their weapons to destabilize and charge the enemy. The third bridge also detonates, but no one knows why.
yes. So the Skitarii one's quite cool. Literally, they just swarm across the bridge and they overcharge their weapons. And it's kind of
Okay, just
talking
like,
about how some of them are popping off early. So they're just kind
right.
of
Blowing
basically
each
just
other
like
up.
an
Yeah,
absolute
okay.
kamikaze across this bridge. And that most of them manage to get to like the other, to where they need to be before they all fucking blow up, basically.
There's not enough like loyalists like Skitarii blowing up in the actual game, like the tabletop game. Like that would be amazing.
Well, we
Overcharging
don't
weapons would be
actually
great.
see Skitarii in the tabletop game, do we?
No, not at all.
Unfortunately,
But like that would be an
none of them
amazing
have
addition.
line. Um,
Overcharged, love it. And then but no one knows why. So let's find out why this bridge
dun dun
blows up.
dun. I mean, most people will know why because there's only three characters in this book.
The sudden arrival of Chrome and the forces from one of the three Ordinatus drills interrupts the Mexican standoff between the Ravens and the Custodes. Corax attempts to confront Crom, but the heretic Magus has no interest in the Raven Lord, holding him back with units of new prototypes, instead focusing on the Custodes' forces with the dozen decimated. That's interesting, actually, because the Custodes, obviously, their gene tech is obviously very, very
That's what he
valuable, isn't it?
wants.
What he wants, yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Word reaches Corax from his other forces, falling back from the ruined bridges, that they are encountering the forces deployed from the second drill. Of the third drill, there's no sign of the enemy, but the sound of combat and gunfire can be heard in that direction. The situation is becoming increasingly untenable. Demon engines are literally crawling down the cliff face to reach them, so Gao sets about reigniting the plasma core and setting it to overload. Crone realizes he has overcommitted to this fight. His engines are equal to the Custodes, but without the forces from the other two drills, he's in danger of being defeated in this particular fight. As the shield captain advances, Crone opens a warp portal to escape, taking grievous damage in the few steps it takes him to escape. Yeah, it's interesting they have like access to stuff like warp portals, isn't it?
Yeah, it's pretty cool in the book because it literally talks about how like the shield captain with his two swords. It says something like he lands a dozen strikes and
Yeah,
Chrome only manages to defend two of them. So he's
right.
basically like all fucked up,
Yeah.
crawling to this warp portal just to get out of there.
Yeah, the fight. As the loyalists take stock of their position, Corax realizes that the surviving ravens have been reinforced by more of his own sons, with Cadius Nex, a man he thought dead, at the front. Nex does nothing to explain his presence, only offering to show the Raven Lord the way to escape. That's pretty awesome. But he's been doing some crazy shit on the sea on Cathonia, I guess, as well, right?
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, yeah.
cool. The explosion for the Perditum core can be seen from orbit, and Corax is presumed dead until he makes Vox contact a few days later. The Custodes teleport back to orbit and return to return to Terra, refusing to speak to anyone except Malcador himself. I love that. They're just like, okay, well, we'll
They
leave you
just
guys,
literally
and we can just
fuck off.
teleport. We've got
Yeah.
transponders, so yeah, see you later.
I,
The
I
loyalists,
do actually love the way this is portrayed in the book of like the custodes are just like we don't trust any of you,
yeah,
even you, Corax,
yeah, that's really cool, isn't it? I love
you
that.
emo freak. Like fuck off.
Stop listening to My Bloody Valentine. Jesus
Yeah.
Christ. The loyalist Mechanicum is all but lost, but worse is that the traitors are able to extract intel from their remains and discover other hidden loyalist cells. Chrome's trap, intended to test his creations against the Custodes that humbled his forces in the first story, largely failed in its original goal. But the damage it did to the Faith in Malcador spy network, the loyalists found on Mars, and the increased distance between the Custodes and the Astartes, it's undeniable. Yeah, that I
So
mean, yeah,
I don't know if it. Yeah, no.
A Pyrrhic victory for the Mechanicum there, but a victory all by yeah, that it is still a victory there. And they
So it
and Corex lost sons. They didn't even manage to find the Magos
to help
biologists that
him.
they were
Yeah.
looking for. Like,
No.
yeah,
Well, they found him, but he was
like
long dead.
in pieces. Yeah,
Yeah. Um, the one thing it does talk about in the book is um how that they're not really sure what Crom's idea was. It was saying as Custodes were dropped, like servitors were running out and grabbing them and running off with them. So,
yeah, okay,
but what hasn't been mentioned here is that during when they kind of cull all these loyalists, hidden loyalist cells, Chrome is in like new armor that is basically can't be damaged.
right.
It's essentially Custodes.
Plate,
It's
right.
armor based off Custodes armor. So he's
Yeah,
obviously worked out
yeah, to take that
how
plate.
to
Well,
make the armor and
unfortunately, it's
whatnot.
only got a 6 up invulnerable save nowadays, so unlucky for him.
Yeah.
Be better sticking to the Mechanicum Protective or whatever
Um,
it's called.
but yeah, I do like the idea of like every time a Custodes is dropped, like these little servitors run out, grab it, and snatch it back
Yoink.
into the
Yeah,
Mechanicum ranks. And
that's
no
pretty.
one was thinking, this is a bit strange. Like
Yeah,
maybe we should stop these fucking absolute fucking dick kickers from being dragged off and
yeah,
reproduced.
yeah. It was the worst thing to send the Custodes, really, wasn't it?
Well,
Actually,
yeah, kind of.
but
Yeah,
without them,
well,
they
I
wouldn't
mean,
have
that was the whole
survived.
point of the trap, wasn't it?
Yeah.
So yeah, it's good. But if they'd sent 10,000, they'd have probably smashed fuck into
Well,
him.
yeah, you're not wrong. You're not wrong.
If
Cool. Okay.
100 custodies nearly won, 10,000 would
Yeah,
have
it's a good point. It's a good point.
crushed them.
It is interesting that though, isn't it? Because I know they are obviously pulled away on in the war in the webway at this point, but there's still like 1,000 of them are probably still left on Terra, and they're still a formidable
Yeah,
fighting
so
force.
it
But
does mention again, there's a paragraph in the book that does talk about how up until this point, unless they were, involved in certain operations, they kind of stayed on Terra. But as the heresy evolved, it does talk about how the Custodes were sending more and more people out because
yeah,
they just didn't trust the Astartes. They just,
yeah,
a job that they would have previously been like, oh, the Astartes can do this.
Yeah,
now at this point they're like, no, we're gonna go and do
and
it
do it. Yeah,
because we just
interesting.
don't fucking trust you guys.
Yeah.
Which is something you haven't really, I haven't kind of picked up on before or read before, and but I do like the idea of it that the different arms kind of don't trust each other.
Yeah,
Um,
the it's interesting because the sense you get with Rogel Dawn and Valdor is that it's actually quite a close relationship.
yeah,
Well, as close as that those two can be. So that perhaps masks the that relationship probably masks how the Custodes feel about them really. But yeah, interesting. Anyway, do you want to do the Warmaster's Arrival? Do you want to take
yeah,
us through
let's
this
do
one?
it. So this is obviously the third and last of the stories in the book. So as it had begun, it ended in silence. So Mars is still silent, blockaded and smothered in Vox interference to keep it contained. This fact gave Dawn comfort as after the Beta Garmin campaign had concluded, Horus was on Terra's doorstep, and a Martian uprising within the system would be a dangerous chink in the solar shield. So this is something that I'd not really kind of heard of before, and I find quite interesting. Is Dawn knew that Mars was corrupted. It is the Dark Mechanicum, but he also just left it alone.
Yeah.
Like they obviously put the fleet in place to blockade it,
Mm.
but he didn't want to do anything to piss them off because he knew that if they attacked, he just didn't have the forces to stop them and Horus's. So that's kind of why the blockade force is there, but he wasn't actively doing anything to kind of piss them
Yeah.
off, you know,
Yeah.
which I find interesting because
Yeah.
surely at some point they're gonna come for you. Like they're not the good guys. So I find it interesting. So what concerned Dawn was the silence coming from the vast minefields and Servitor placed orbital weapons seeded in the outer system. Scans from Major Kane confirmed that a beam of intense cyberthurgic power was emanating from Mars, interfering with those defenses. The solar system could not afford for the outer defenses to be inoperable, so the destruction of this beacon source became the highest priority to the defense of Terra. So basically, there's a chink in the armor.
Mm.
Um, Horus could turn up with his fleet and they wouldn't know it because this part of the outer defenses is being hit with like super powerful scrap code that's being beamed from Mars. Um, the orbital cannons of Terra could not draw a line to the target, and orbital destruction was forbidden even now by the Emperor himself for fear of destroying the Martian forces they would need to reclaim. So yeah, the Emperor literally said, "You are not allowed to destroy Mars because." If we win the heresy, we will be lost without Mars. So it was kind of catch 22. They
Yeah.
want it gone, but they don't. Um, Sanguinius offers up a force of inducti, armored in the very suits rescued from Mars by the Imperial Fist. This offered to not only protect the seasoned warriors in the Legion, but also to give the green inducti some experience. Um, and again, this was quite a nice little retcon of explaining why everyone's armored in Mark 6 armor. Sent in the 94th Company, made up entirely of inductee under the command of Asta Crone, who Sanguinius didn't like very much. So yeah, he wasn't on Sanguinius's good list. Only a single member of the entire force could draw their lineage to Baal, the dreadnought Hamona, the sole survivor of his squad on Cygnus Prime. Um, so yeah, literally every single member of the 94th Company was inducted from Terra. Other legions, including Fafnaran, offered to support, but Dawn refused all offers of assistance. So it was actually, oh God, what's his name? The Imperial Fist from the first story we talked about.
Cambodias.
Yeah,
Cambodias.
he was one of the people that was like, "Send me.
Yeah.
I know all about Mars." But Dawn didn't want to send veterans because he knew he needed them on the
Needed them for
walls.
on Terra, yeah.
Yeah. In the years since the previous story, the Custodes had become more detached and more used to operating entire forces of their own further away from Terra as they grew increasingly untrusting of the Astartes. Operating outside of Dawn's command structure, they readied their own ship. Bypassing Mars, they made for an immediate jump to the outer system. Arriving, they followed the signal and find the Arca Silentus, a miracle of self-sufficient Martian technology, floating in the void alone. The station was the size of a small moon under the control of a hive mind of automata. The station just floated around,
The Borg,
producing and deploying
basically.
defensive weapons and mines. Excuse me. Hidden to any except the intense auguries of the Custodes, they arrive too close for defensive weapons to work, and all 200 Custodes teleport aboard. Where they arrive should be cold iron corridors, but instead, I keep getting boxes, get annoying. But they instead find themselves inside fleshy gullets where warp, taint, and metal had fused together. Fleshy gullets. The automata are similarly affected and literally rip through their own allies in desperation to reach the Custodes. Only a single Custodes falls to the initial combat, the unfortunate fault of a bad teleport fusing his leg with a wall. The automated forges do not rest, and those destroyed are soon replaced by stronger demon-corrupted units that are more of a match to the Custodes. At the landing pads by Major Kane and a horde of Mechanicum automata led by Domina Sherol, a repaired commander who fought at Cygna, seemingly defying Dawn's orders. Kane simply replies, Lord Dawn has decreed that no soul shall leave the defense of Terra in aid of your mission. Fortunately, I have many warriors that are unburdened by such inconveniences and have been prevailed upon to lead them to your cause. So, bending the rules a little bit.
Mm.
No souls allowed to leave, but robots don't have souls. I mean, that's a question there, isn't it? Do robots
Yeah,
have
yeah.
souls or not? I
Interesting.
don't know. The book makes a comparison between the hypno-educated inductee and the automata, both understanding their training, but reliant on their commanders to operate properly. The combined force sets out for Mars, finding no defenses left behind the ring of blockading ships. As the drop pods and attack craft drop through the atmosphere, the weaponized scrap code of Chrome reaches back, shutting down the craft, sending them crashing to the surface. With no control, far short of the objective. The survivors are beset by twisted Mechanicum constructs, even as they unpick themselves from the crash sites. The inductee form up with their supporting automata forming a defensive perimeter. As the battle wages on, the loyalist automata grow ever more cruel, deliberately abusing the traitor engines. The inductee is similarly affected by equipment and war gear failures, armor seizing, bolt guns exploding in hands. Seeing they could not hold position forever, Crone doesn't hesitate in breaking from the carefully laid plans and adopting a more fluid action. As they break out the trap, recklessly fighting, they finally manage to break through the automata despite many lives lost. Desperately fighting in a way that no organized army will recognize, they break out in a loose and brutal charge. Crone intended to set off towards the objective, but could not leave the enemy at their back. An inductee centurion and 50 of his men volunteered to form a defensive rearguard. Crone approves but doesn't look back, having seen enough desperate last stands for a lifetime, only hearing the sounds of dwindling gunfire in the distance for an hour.
It's not looking good for the Blood Angels.
No, no, it's
Oh.
not. Meanwhile, at the edge of the system, the Custodes ship in orbit around Arca Silentus is finally caught and destroyed in an instant. The scrap code had mutated the former station into something more akin to a giant iron crustacean. The Custodes are swarmed by decimators and barely holding their own, needing to work in groups to overcome them. The Custodes were pushed further back, isolated and ambushed in the tight confines of the system and systematically hunted down. Knowing that their time was short and any hope of escape was gone, the shield captain sets out to destroy the station to end its corruption. Aiming to reach the center of the platform, he calls on all scattered Custodes he can, but can only reach a few dozen. Back on Mars, the Blood Angel progress is slow, and the pursuing forces have started catching up with the back of the column. Making progress towards the scrap code beacon, they cannot afford to stop to engage the enemy, so must press on, even as more and more of the automata start to malfunction. However, they start to detect a hidden signal, traceable to old Skitarii codes. Unfortunately, the newest wave of Chrome's perfected blood slaughterers also have this signal, and were in the path of the Blood Angels needed to follow. The Blood Angels' forward group formed up for the enemy, but for every hole opened by bolter fire, another took its place. As they closed, bolters were stowed and chainswords drawn, ready to fight to the last. As the iron tide closes on the thin wall of red, the sound of energy beams ring out, scything into the ranks of the traitor automata. Hidden Skitarii, loyal to no Magos but to the machine cult itself, strike out at the corrupted automata, and they are caught between the two forces. Crone can only watch as the battle escalates, throwing up a huge cloud of red dust high into the air as the forces clash. His worries were confirmed when a distant war horn blared out, a heavily corrupted battle titan drawn to the cloud. Crone tries to signal a retreat as it opens fire indiscriminately, but the Inducti are too poorly disciplined to heed such an order. Um, as Crone prepares to give his final order, the whole world flashes white. A concealed Mechanicum Ordinata lances out at the Titan, dealing a savage wound to the corrupted war engine. As the Titan turns instead fire on the hidden weapon, a message comes through from the Skitarii. Distract it. Thanatar's and man-portable heavy weapons focus on the Titan, doing no real damage but drawing its attention long enough for a second Ordinata's shot to strike its head and bring it down. The Skitarii return to hiding, warning Crone only that an attempt to assail the scrap code source would end in failure. As the Skitarii... That's fucking ominous, isn't it?
Mm.
As the Skitarii departed, the wretched automata pursuing them started to close. Knowing they could not stand and fight, nor could they scatter, the angels had no options available to them. Archimagos Shrol gave the angels their chance. Her automata could go no further due to the increasing corruption in their systems, so they would stand and fight to the last. The Blood Angels had sacrificed their lives to save her on Cygnus. Now she would return that debt. Forming up around the fallen Titan, she declared to hold it till they returned, defending one last piece of loyal, reclaimed Mars. The Blood Angels set out, denied another battle. The inductee were despondent. The battle wasn't the glory promised in their hypno-indoctrination. Instead, a bitter field of sacrifice and loss. But still, they sound like Iron Warriors, though. But still, they continued on, hoping for victory. Arriving at Chrome's stronghold, they find the signal being projected from a pair of huge war machines in a vast sea of blood slaughterers and other automata. Hopelessly outnumbered and outgunned, Crone gives the order to charge. Billions of miles away, the Custodes reach the center of the fortress and find it twisted beyond all recognition. Demonic flesh merges with metal, birthing half-formed decimators. Cutting through the twisted forms, the surviving Custodes reach the heart of the facility. The remaining Custodes formed a defensive line, losing several of their numbers to give time to plant melter charges on the atomic heart. Fighting to leave the chamber, they detonate the charges, but the station refuses to die even as the core is breached. The explosion had simply released the demonic corruption within. A new heart born of warp matter replaced the first, and a portal to the warp opened it before it, spewing out true-born demonic forces. Oh, fucking hell.
Nice one, Custodes.
Yeah, oh God, it was all going so well. As the precious few of the Custodes form up, the Vox spoke for the first time since it was silenced by the station. Carrying the idents of the Dark Angels, the Custodes believed it a falsehood, until two Dark Angels destroyers broke from the warp, drawn by the beacon of the station's core explosion. The corrupted defenses started to draw target locks on the new arrivals, so the Custodes gave the order to fire on their position. The station must fall. As the Dark Angels close, missiles pepper them, but their shots back have little effect. A lucky hit kills the engines of one, leaving it spinning towards the station, which reaches out with metal tentacles and rips the ship in half. A huge mouth opens up on the station, and the second ship fills it with rad missile fire. The station shears in half, even as the Dark Angel's ship takes horrific damage. Good old Dark Angels. I feel like all they do is just run around saving people. There is the telltale shimmer of local teleportation on the Dark Angel ship, and it pushes into the dark, even as its engines flicker and die. As the Arca Silentia station collapses into the warp portal at its core, the automated defenses recover, recognizing the Dark Angel ship as friendly, but it is too late as the ship is crippled. Lost out in the dark, it is left adrift, with none aware of its sacrifice. After the siege is finished and Horus defeated, the ship adrift is eventually found by Mechanicum salvage vessels. While the ship is ruined, at its core they find 36 Dark Angels and 19 Custodes of the original 200 in suspended animation, who they recover to Saturn for revival. That's pretty cool.
Yeah, that's very cool.
I like that. On Mars, the Blood Angels are embroiled in their final battle. Their narrow wedge assault cuts through automata, but those that fall are swiftly replaced. Scrap code contamination is total, and orders can only be passed by word of mouth and the dreadnought Hamona speakers. As they press on, still determined to reach the enemy, the horde parts. Lucas Crone, watching the battle from the command seat upon the vast signal emitting war machine, sends in the largest brass scorpion created. Its tail cannon and demolisher taking huge chunks of the angel's lights. Stampeding through the horde with no weapons able to hurt it, it throws itself on Crone, grabbing him in its claws and crushing him slowly. His armor pops and buckles under the load. Before it is able to kill him, however, Dreadnought Hamoa rips the giant claw from its body as a dual cyclic Melter Leviathan unleashes its weapons at point blank range. The scorpion dies, its thrashing killing even more automata and blood angels. Crone, standing despite the terrible damage wrought on him, rallies what forces are left as two more scorpions come into view to guard the signal emitted walkers. That's where you're like, oh, for fuck's sakes, would you just
How
leave
many
me alone?
scorpions are on this
Like,
planet? It's crazy.
Christ. At that moment, a blast of cyberthergic feedback slammed down through the atmosphere from the destroyed Silentus station, collapsing the walkers and sending all the traitors into complete disarray. Crone gives the order, one final charge. The disrupted automata are easy prey, even for the few blood angels left. Crone, now carrying his axe in one working arm, climbs to the command deck of Lucas Chrome, only to find it empty save a few Thalax. As the automata began to recover, the remaining Blood Angels still found themselves with no weapons that could damage the giant signal emitters. Presumably the double melter Leviathan had wandered off. Dreadnought sacrifices himself, ripping into the power core of one of the massive signal platforms, causing a nuclear detonation that destroys it, as well as the other signal, and all other forces for miles around. And everyone went home, and all was fine. Like, fucking hell. With the destruction of the Mitters, the defences of Seoul were resolute once more, but at great cost. After the war, when Dawn would bring his forces to recover Mars, they would find an unlikely survivor, Crone, now more augmetic than flesh, I can't read what that says.
Had survived with Scutari resistance.
Ah, that's quite cool. I like that. And so we reach the end of another Lord Deep Dive. There you go.
Yeah, I quite like the short story like format. I think that's pretty cool. I think that there's lots of flavor. I think that if you're properly into Custodes, I think that this could be a book for you. Like, and we have only gone into a fraction of the detail, but yeah, there's some cool stuff there. I think the traitor Mechanicum really play as just the bad guys that the good guys have to fight, right? I mean, there are named characters within there, and it's a shame we didn't get rules like for like Archmagos Chrome and stuff like that. It would be cool to see. Is it Chrome within the Custodes armor? Is that Chrome or was it somebody else?
Oh, yeah, I think it was. Oh, I can't remember.
It would have been cool to see like Chrome with Custodes armor as a character. I think that would have been pretty awesome.
Yeah, yeah.
But no, it was really 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 interesting and some great ideas buzzing around for armies and things like that now, right? So
like I say, like I really enjoyed the stories. I just it was Lucas Chrome. It was Lucas Chrome.
Yeah, it was Chrome. Yeah.
Yeah.
Want to see a model with like gold mangled
Yeah,
Custodes armor on him.
Yeah, just plates of Custodes armor strapped to him. Like I say, I really enjoyed the stories. I just think for a book titled The Martian Civil War,
Yeah.
there wasn't really that much Martian on Martian action.
No, not in. It's from the perspective, isn't it? That's the thing. Like, because everything's told from the perspective of the Custodes and the Astartes.
Yeah.
Whereas, like, there is lots of like automata in there, but they're just like mindless hordes basically fighting.
Yeah.
With a few exceptions of a couple of Archmagos, rather than kind of going, okay, well, let's spin it round and put Archmagos Chrome as the main protagonist. We tell it from the perspective of the bad guys, and I think that's the big difference. And just to say as well, so it was the Vaults of Moravec was what was under Olympus Mons, and that was the thing that was
Hello?
hello, you there? You're back. You're back.
Yeah.
With me. So it was the Vaults of Moravec that was under the Olympus Mons, and that was what was sealed. And Moravec basically did exactly as we discussed. He was from Old Terra, and he basically mashed technology with like the warp, and that was what was. And that's allowed the kind of like once the vaults were opened, that was the true schism with Terra.
Right.
and that's allowed all the heretic kind of like nonsense to take place. Anyway, well, we hope you enjoyed this one. Let's just say a final few thank yous.
I will
Oh,
just
sorry,
add
yeah.
that producer Kerry has put next up the Dark Mechanicum lore from Legiones Imperialis, a book with actual mech on mech lore. So I haven't actually read that, so it would be interesting
Yeah, I think also
to
what would be
read that.
good for that one will be that we go through maybe some backstory of kind of the history of the Mechanicum as well. I think that
Yeah,
like
yeah,
let's put
like
that
the
in as
the
well, and then we can go through.
fealty of the Forged Worlds to
Yeah,
Mars, and yeah, yeah.
yeah, I think that would be a good one to do.
Yeah, agreed.
Cool. Okay, well, just a final few thank yous. So, a sponsor of ours, Sacrus Mundus, you can go get their terrain files online from Colt's My Mini Factory or their Patreon, and then you can print those off from particularly any one of our 3D printers. Speaking of 3D printers, we've got Beowulf Miniature Printing. I saw an amazing like Mordheim city that he had printed off.
Oh shit, yeah, I
It
saw
it
that.
it was
It's fucking
it
insane.
was nuts, wasn't it? Like it's
Yeah,
enough just to
yeah.
make you
All
want to
like
start
little
Mordheim.
underground
Yeah.
tunnels and yeah,
Yeah, like, and I saw that, I was like, this is fucking cool. Yeah, I know it's
fucking
not heresy, but like,
insane.
man,
Yeah.
and you have
Yeah, I
nothing
did
like
tell
that
you
for
about that.
heresy. Like, you have like Zone Mortalis, right? But no, like multi-layered kind of like things that you can just print.
No,
Yeah, it's
yeah. Fuck yeah, that did look good, yeah.
yeah. So make sure you check that out, and make sure you check out Instagram to check out the that one. And then thanks to
Yeah.
Bling as well. We were talking only about them the other day in the last show, where they've got some amazing stuff for some like Mechanicum conversions, some like Ursarax and things like that, because they've got a
Yeah,
relationship with
yeah.
Artisans of War, so definitely worth checking out for Mechanicum in particular. You can use Heresy Hammer for 10% off on the checkout code as well. Thank you as well to our Praetor tier. We got like probably I would say about 50 new Patreons this month. So thank you, thank you, thank
You
you.
know.
Particular thank you though goes out to our top level patrons, our Praetors. I've got 2 months of sending out t-shirts left, and then we're moving on to our next one, which Lee is
Yes.
organising and planning. So expect some updates from Lee in the new year.
I will hopefully be getting pictures soon,
Oh, lovely jubbly.
and then should actually have the product in my hands next month. So stay tuned for
Stay
that
tuned for
one.
that one. Okay, awesome. So yeah, so thank you to our top tier patrons, our Praetors, and we can go to page number 2 as well. There must be well over 160 top tier patrons. So thank you,
Crazy,
thank you. And I
crazy,
know
crazy.
a couple of you have asked about the Mechanicum draw. John's going to do that on New Year's Day. So the deadline is now closed for the Mechanicum Army draw, but he'll do the draw on New Year's Day and let everybody know who the winner is. And just the final one, you can use hashtag Heresy Hammer on Instagram, and then we can kind of have a look for your for the things you've been doing, so we can share it in the show. Don't forget, we've also got a WhatsApp community group. You can find that on Patreon. Even if you aren't a member of the Patreon, if you or a paying member, a free member, you can find the link to the WhatsApp community group. I think we've got well over like 400 Patreons on that WhatsApp group. Please don't forget to like and subscribe. And then just leave a comment. Would be really nice as well. Just let us know what you think. And then if you want to send in any lists, we've got a number of lists this month. But if you want to send in any lists or questions or anything like that for our community shows that we do once a month, you can email heresyhammer at 30k@gmail.com. And the final one, if you like what we do and want to support us and like the shows that we've been creating over the past 2 years, and want to continue for us to make shows and to support us, then please consider signing up for our Patreon. It's as little as £3 a month at our kind of um, our most basic level, but from there are other levels where you can get cheeky little bonuses. Centurion, where you get could win a prize every 4 months, and then our top tier one where we give you a gift every 6 months as well. So yeah, so thanks ever so much for joining us for this episode, and we look forward to seeing you guys in the new year for more lore videos, more Tactica videos, more community shows, and just a whole load more content as well. So we shall see you on the next one. Take care, guys.
Take care. Bye bye.